Am I
Okay,
still muted, George? Because it
so
said,
you're unmuted.
okay. All right, it is, according to my watch, exactly 5 a.m. in Hawaii. So hi, everybody. I'm coming to you from Hawaii. And what I did was I wore my Hawaiian shirt to put a little color into the topic that we're doing today. It's kind of like a fun topic because it's so common and everybody uses defense mechanisms. So I thought I'd start the class with 2 quick YouTubes, talk about defense mechanisms, and then open it up to questions and answers. A couple of, actually more than a couple of you have gotten in touch with me as to subjects that you would like covered next week, the 8th class. And please, the rest of you, if there's something I can't guarantee, I'll know the answer to a question or what you have covered. But what I can guarantee is that I will find out the answer for you and get in touch with you after the class is over. So think about some questions you might have for next week. Don't make them too hard, though. There was a TV show many years ago, Stump the Band, and so don't stump me, although I'm easily stumped. One of my favorite answers to questions is, I don't know, but I'll find out. So not only questions, but some topics that you'd like to cover in the 8th class. Sal had at the beginning just assumed the 8th class would be a little potpourri of what we have covered, or, questions about, I don't know. Sometimes people ask me, do you have a question? And I go, yes. And then they expect it to be something relevant. And I go, what is the meaning of life? That's a stumper. So nothing that tough, like what's the meaning of life, unless you know what the meaning of life is, and then you can share it with us. But if there's some topics you'd like to cover, a couple of you want to know more about cognitive behavioral therapy, and we'll certainly go into that. And some of you wanted to know more about anxiety and depression. And I know you didn't sign up for a psych course, but because it was psych and propaganda, and Sal handled propaganda because Sal is a propagandist, actually. But if you have questions about propaganda, ask away, or if you know what question you have about propaganda, I'll call up Sal and see if he has a good answer. But again, I'm hoping that Sal will maybe call in next week. And as I said to George, he's probably being pre-op some way, and maybe there's a possibility he'll call in today, but I guess I doubt it. But again, I quoted Sal to the people that came here early, and I said, and this is a quote, Sal said, not to worry, that he's so obnoxious, nothing is going to happen to Sal. Before we talk about defense mechanisms and show YouTube, a couple of fast YouTubes, just wanted to do some trash talk on Sal. I was fortunate to work with really brilliant people in my department and other departments, people that spoke internationally at the Sorbonne. They spoke all over the place. And I have to tell you that Sal is one of the brightest people I have ever met in my life. And I don't think he knows that. I don't think he believes that of himself. But I just wanted to tell you that he's so bright. And he's really a scholar. And the work that he puts into preparing classes for you is so exemplary. I'm so impressed. He doesn't stop. And I just wanted to, I think you kind of know it, but I just wanted to rubber stamp what you've always kind of known. He's a real gem. And I know we all wish him success and an easy surgery and an uneventful and swift recovery. But anyway, if George would be kind enough to play just a couple of fast YouTubes, we'll get started. Thank you, George.
Okay.
If you have an enlarged prostate, do this 15-second Japanese ritual before bed to shrink it almost immediately.
Hello everyone, and welcome.
Mr. Simplifies tutorials. In this tutorial, we're going to look at human defense mechanisms by Anna Freud. Now, in our day-to-day lives, we do tend to think of some people that we know as being in denial or
George,
as
we're not seeing the YouTube
rationalizing some sort of behavior. Now, these are all examples of defense mechanisms. Now, defense mechanisms,
George,
simplest of ways, are
Yes.
just
we're not seeing the YouTube. I'm just seeing
protect a person.
class 7 defense
Unwanted
Or
mechanisms.
unpleasant thoughts, which that
actually affect the
It
person
didn't show
and
the,
which
No,
the person
the
would
YouTube
face
wasn't showing.
difficulties coping
The
with.
audio was there.
Now, Sigmund Freud was the person who originally conceptualized defense mechanisms, but his work was developed and
well, I did what he said.
He's a saboteur then, George. Also, I don't think he wanted the first one that I thought was going to show. Maybe he did. Sounds quirky.
That's the first one he wanted, but it wasn't showing.
No, just the audio was showing, not the YouTube.
Okay, let me go back.
Oh, don't worry about it. If we can't do it, we can't do
No,
it.
no, we'll try it now.
So, C.G. Jung, all right, 1875 to 1961.
Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers for
No,
This is what happened the last time. Let me go back again.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Mr. Simplifies.
in this tutorial, we're going to look
Are you
at
seeing that?
human defense
No.
mechanisms by Anna Freud. Now, in our day-to-day lives, we do tend to think of
no, just the audio. George, it's okay. We can just skip it. It's, they were two quick YouTube audio videos that I really liked because it did simplify what we're going to talk about today. But luckily, I taught for many decades, and we always, anything that could go wrong did go wrong, especially in terms of technology. So the heck with it. Defense mechanisms. I think it's a fun kind of topic. We all have them. We all use them. We don't know we're using them. As a matter of fact, it was really interesting. I was looking at some stuff on the internet, and no one said the two most important facts about defense mechanisms. Number one, that they distort reality. That we kind of all knew. And number two, they're unconscious. Like some of the stuff that I read, it says they're mainly unconscious. No, they're not. They're like 100%, 1,000% unconscious. Otherwise, it wouldn't work, because the whole idea behind defense mechanisms is that we don't like to feel anxious. And sometimes we feel so anxious that we got to do something about it. Some people pop a pill, some people go talk to therapists, some people talk to their friends, eat anything that we need to do to feel less anxious, because we don't want to feel anxiety. But in terms of defense mechanisms, and we all employ them, they are always unconscious. If they weren't unconscious, they wouldn't work. So if you said to yourself, I know what I'll do, I'll just deny that this is going on, that's not going to work. You have to lie to yourself very convincingly so that you don't know you're lying to yourself, because that sounds kind of logical. If I know I'm lying to myself, I'm still anxious because I know I'm lying to myself. I can lie to other people easily. So why don't I just lie to myself? No, that wouldn't work, because it would be like if, God forbid, you had a diagnosis of a terrible illness, and you said, I know what I'll do. I'll just deny that I have the illness. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll deny it. I'll deny it to everybody. I'm even going to deny it to myself. Well, no, you're not employing denial. And people use that term so casually. Oh, I'm just in denial, or he's in denial, she's in denial, and some people are in denial. And defense mechanisms aren't all bad. Remember a few weeks ago when we talked about the id, the ego, and the superego, Freud labeling all of that stuff. The id, I want it, I'm primitive, I want it, I exist, and my guideline is the pleasure principle. Give it to me, and give it to me yesterday. And then we have the superego. Now, these are the rules. This is how you behave if you want to be a proper citizen. And no, you can't do that. And you must do this. And you have to behave yourself. That's the superego. And for the main part, the superego is conscious and unconscious. But the ego is the traffic cop. The ego is saying, okay, here's the fight. The boxer in this corner is Mr. Id, and the boxer in that corner is Ms. Superego. And now the fight begins. That's the ego's job. I'm going to referee this fight, but I know what I'm going to do. I don't want my body, my wholeness, me. I don't want me to be scared and nervous and upset. Oh God, I don't want that. Okay, I will employ a defense mechanism, but I'm going to be crafty because I'm an ego and I'm really quite clever. I'm going to be crafty. I know what I'll do. I will have that I don't know that I'm doing it. So I'm not going to be nervous or anxious because I don't believe it anymore. Like I didn't get that diagnosis, or that girl just dumped me. I don't want to feel bad about myself. I know what I'll do. I'll deny that it happened. She didn't dump me. Yeah, she didn't dump me. And then let's call ourselves Bill. And then Bill can go around saying to someone, if they go, did she dump you, Bill? And Bill says, no, she had so many problems. I dodged a bullet. Forget a bullet. I dodged a cannonball. That broad was just plain nuts, and I'll believe it. And I feel better. Oh, I'm not so anxious anymore. And that's all because of the workings of my ego, but I don't know that. So on one shoulder, I have the id, on the other shoulder, I have the superego, and they're battling, and I'm scared, but the ego, the cop in the middle, stops the battle. Or someone who, to show you that they're not all bad. As a matter of fact, I think sometimes they're mostly good. We'll talk about good, bad in a second, maybe. But, have you ever spoken to someone who, let's make the dumpy the male. Sorry. We'll make him the male. And he's been married for 20 years. And his wife walked out on him. He's devastated. He can't believe it. He's depressed. He's anxious to the point where really he doesn't function well. I can't believe she actually dumped me after 20 years of marriage. And then all of a sudden, and again, we'll call him Bill, all of a sudden, Bill doesn't quite feel so bad. You know, I know she's coming back. Oh, she's definitely coming back. There's no way she can look in the mirror and not come back, especially the kids aren't even talking to her now. So she'll be back. And his friends have already gotten an invitation to his former wife's wedding. And she's now living in Paris. And she's doing all kinds of things that show anybody that's remotely conscious that she's not coming back. But Bill couldn't handle that. So he's in denial, true denial, because he doesn't know he's in denial. He believes what he's telling everybody. He has to believe it. He has to believe it in order to survive. And eventually, hopefully, Bill evolves and he can get to the point where the ego doesn't have to fool him anymore, where he can say, I guess she's not coming back. He's still very sad. He's still anxious, but not the way he used to be. He's sad because it was a very unpleasant life event, but he can now handle it. I once had I worked at the Merchant Marine Academy, and I once had a midshipman call me on a Saturday night, and he was really, really upset. He had just remembered awful sexual abuse that he had suffered as a child. And the memories and the images came flooding back to him. He didn't know whether he was crazy, didn't know whether he wanted to kill himself, didn't know what he wanted to do at all. Excuse me. By the way, I have silent reflux like Biden, who sometimes gets hoarse and has to sip. So if you see me taking a sip or a cough or whatever, excuse me. But so he called me. Now, lucky for him, my life has always been so filled with things to do that I was home on a Saturday night, devouring a pint of ice cream, wondering what I was going to watch on television. So I was able to return to the academy and to talk to him. And I told him that the good news really was that he could handle this information. I was going to help him handle it, but that he was well enough and intact enough to be able to handle it. And that's why it was coming back when it was coming back, because he could handle it. So one of the most common defense mechanisms that we employ is denial. We just can't handle the truth right now. But when we can, we will leave denial and get back to the real world. Now, if we're in denial for 20 years, that's not so good. Or if we behave in such a way that could be injurious to ourselves or others because we're behaving a certain way because we believe something, no, that's no good. But for the most part, it's good because that's where you are until you can handle the truth. And that's why you see a lot of people, when something bad has happened to them, really deny that it's going to be permanent or deny wholly that it happened. I'm not talking about becoming psychotic and not dealing with reality of the world. I'm just talking about that one issue. They can't handle it. And unless we can give them something else, like I always told the students that were learning to become therapists, I said, you don't strip away the denial until the person is strong enough to be able to handle the truth. And that's your job, to be with them in their journey. But But when they can handle it, it'll happen. And you'll help them to have it happen by being so supportive. So denial is a big one. You know, you ever see those shirts, denial isn't a river in Africa. I think the population that many people think about when they think about denial is substance abusers. The topic is substance abusers. Very often they're in denial. The alcoholic very often is in denial, because one of your first steps is you have to acknowledge that you have a problem. And that's hard to do. And that's why we see so many people that have problem drinking, and someone confronts them and says, you know, yeah, I think you need some help. No, I don't. I can stop whenever I want. No, I only drink on the weekends. No, I'm not an alcoholic. I just drink beer. You know, those are all not true. But the person really believes it, because he or she just can't at that moment. They just don't have the strength. They're not weak people, by the way. Addicts aren't weak people. They're people with a disease. That could be a whole other subject. Yes, they have to take responsibility for their actions and the damage that they do, without a doubt. We're not condoning it and giving them a full pass, but they're not weak. They're not morally weak. And so many people used to believe that. Well, you just cut it out. Stop drinking. I don't drink the way you do. I don't even drink at all. Just stop drinking. How easy could that be? Very, very difficult. So we really very often think of substance abusers when we think of denial. Now, another defense mechanism is repression. Sometimes people call it suppression. For me, when you suppress something, I think it's very conscious. I'm just suppressing that. That didn't happen. I'm going to just put it down, and it's, oh no, that event just never occurred. That's very conscious. So you kind of know you're suppressing something. But repression is another popular defense mechanism. And remember, has to meet the two factors. Keep remembering those two factors. It has to distort reality, because reality is just too awful to acknowledge. And it has to be unconscious. The person is not aware. The person is not aware of saying, I'm just going to say it didn't happen. That's what I'm going to do. No, I didn't happen. It didn't happen. What are you talking about? No. It didn't happen. Now, well, wasn't that bad? And we're just going to hit the common ones today, because there's so many more defense mechanisms out there. We just kind of ratchet it down. You ever speak to somebody, here's a good example. You ever speak to somebody who tells you about something awful that happened to them, and they talk to you like they're almost like a journalist on TV. Hello, this is Terry Bordan coming to you from the White House. I always used to think to myself, and who are you when you're not at the White House? Yeah, but this is Terry Bordan coming to you at the White House. And they talk like this. What happened was we were walking down the street, and we were minding our own business, and all of a sudden a door swung open, and this guy was in the car, and he murdered somebody right in front of us. Actually, he, shot his head off, and there was like tissue and blood all over the place. We were scared. We thought that he might get us. They're flat, and they're telling you something that's like, holy cow, what? you almost got murdered and you saw someone's brain disintegrate in front of your face, but they're very, very flat. They're keeping it just, that's how they're getting through what they need to get through. So again, all the time, let me just hit the common ones. Oh, this is a good one. This actually is one that is, I think, good, maybe 100%. I think it's sort of good 100% of the time. Sublimation. It's a defense mechanism where you take unacceptable, uncomfortable thoughts and feelings and beliefs that you have, and you convert them into behaviors that are very, very acceptable. So you are enraged and you have a lot of anger in you, and you just want to knock the daylights of anybody that just crosses your path. And you become a fighter, you become a kickboxer, or you do something athletic to get rid of that. You know, many years therapists used to do this, and I think they kind of, the old timers, and I guess I'm an old timer, they used to have Joe Palooka punching bags. See, when I'm talking about Joe Palooka punching bags to students, they didn't know who Joe Palooka was. But everybody here, we know who Joe Palooka is. We know who Pearl Mester is. They don't know these people. Sophie Tucker, I could go on, but that's for another course. So they sublimate these unacceptable feelings and beliefs, and they're not converted into unacceptable behavior. They're converted into behavior that we all look at and kind of applaud. So sublimation, I'm maybe going out on a limb and saying 100%, but for me, I think it's 100% kind of good, because we certainly don't want people walking the streets and killing people because they're in such a rage. And again, we're talking about defense mechanisms. We're not talking about disorders. We're not talking about mental illness or health, where some people have uncontrollable rage, or they have uncontrollable impulses. Yeah, that's dangerous and that's not good, but that's not sublimation. Projection, that's also another real common one. We project onto others what we don't want to accept in ourselves, or that we just don't accept in general. So we project onto somebody else. So for example, let's see what I can talk to you about. You have a strong dislike for somebody, but that's not being a good person. This person never did anything to you. You don't even know why you dislike her, but you do. Maybe she reminds you of the Aunt Tilly and you hated her. Or maybe she reminds you of you and you don't like yourself so much. So instead of saying, I dislike Mary, you truly believe, because remember, you got to believe it. The lie is so good. The ego is so convincing. It's like a hypnotist. You believe it, and you go, you know, Mary doesn't like me. I don't know why she doesn't like me. Why doesn't she like me? You know, I mean, what I ever do to Mary and make her not like me? So I projected my dislike for Mary onto Mary herself. And I'm feeling okay about me. I'm not a bad person. I don't dislike Mary. Well, I kind of do now, but only because she dislikes me. Otherwise, I wouldn't dislike Mary. She's a good woman. Intellectualization. I have another term for it. I call it Salization. Sal loves intellectualization, but it's really not a defense mechanism because he knows he's doing it. But intellectualization, when you become almost an academic. Again, God forbid you're given a terrible illness and you're overwhelmed And the ego, that brilliant ego that exists in you says, she can't handle this right now. You go about researching the illness. You find out all that you can. Now, hey, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah, hey, that's not bad. But you really have repressed the truth that this is you, and just kind of sounds scholarly when, or some kind of philosopher of life when you talk about it. I think a lot of people had to do that when AIDS first came out. And I think I mentioned this. The horror, the absolute horror of seeing a loved one dying in front of you with horrible symptoms and pain, mental anguish, and you're HIV positive, and this is at the beginning, because thankfully now we have therapeutics and people are living with AIDS. But at the beginning, they were certainly dying from AIDS, and they were dying horrible deaths. And loved ones were watching them die, knowing that that was going to be their future. So intellectualization, not such a bad thing. Rationalization, oh, that is so common, and we all do it. But for it to really be rationalization, we don't know we're doing it. Because how many times have you heard, oh, I rationalized that? No, you didn't. Because if you know you were rationalizing, it's not a defense mechanism, because you knew you were rationalizing. You know. And it's a word that's so popularly employed, and it's employed correctly. You know, I rationalize such and such. Yeah, you did. You know, want to convert it to a verb? Be my guest. You want to make it a noun? Be my guest. You can make it anything you want. But anybody who says I rationalized it, they didn't. It wasn't that bad. The ego didn't have to intervene. The ego said, they can handle this. I don't have to let them think something else is going on. So again, remember, defense mechanisms prevent anxiety, and they're unconscious. It protects your self-esteem. It protects your self-concept. The ego is fabulous, best referee ever. And it's funny, like with success and failure, like a lot of people attribute success to themselves, and failure is that it's somebody else's fault, or it's a life event fault. And remember, in order for it to really work, you have to be so anxious that the ego wakes up. Oh, okay, I'm on the job again. That crackpot's feeling anxious. I got to do something about it because she's a nut job. Kay and I don't rationalize. We just call each other because we are both peculiar in certain ways. Ooh, can I throw in an ad for something? Don't you hate it when people are on television and they're on television to sell a book? But I'm going to have a book coming out in about less than 6 months, I think. And it's going to be called Being Neurotic, a children's book for adults. So it's going to look like a children's book. It's going to have glossy cover and cute illustrations, but it's going to be about what, people who are neurotic, a very used to be common term, now thrown out, do. So it would make a very good coffee table book. Certainly it would engage people in conversation, plug. And basically it's autobiographical. Kay could have written it too, because everything in the book that's screwy, she's screwy that way too. Regression, another defense mechanism. Reverting to former time when you felt better and more comfortable. And sometimes it's really kind of subtle, but it's there. We never talked about Freud's psychosexual stages of development because it's not a psych course, but there's certainly psych with the propaganda, because again, the propagandists, they're trying to read us and they know about the stuff I'm talking to you about today. It really can get very complicated. You have to give them kudos for being so brilliant, but sometimes the brilliance is converted to being evil. But anyway, we regress to a time that was much better. So let's say someone is kind of a little bit, a lot of bit, hardly at all fixated at the oral stage. Maybe we start to smoke cigarettes. We chew a lot of gum. We're not going to go around with a blanket and sucking our thumb, even though that could be helpful, you know. So that all depends upon the stage where you were feeling comfortable. So that's the oral stage. I won't give you examples of the anal stage because sometimes, not as often as it should be, I censor myself. But a motto in my life, which is not a good motto, is ready, fire, aim. So sometimes in my life, I actually aim before I fire. But for the most part, if I think it, kind of blurt it out. So other defense mechanisms can be acting out. Some people act out what's bothering them. You know, maybe you throw something against the wall, or you punch the Joe Palooka bag. When I was talking about the Joe Palooka bag, I didn't finish my thought. I don't have any senior moments. My whole life is a senior moment, interrupted occasionally by junior moments. You know, some people have senior moments because their life's I'm pretty much at a senior moment, and every once in a while I become much more rational and reasonable. Dissociate, we just absolutely separate ourselves. And another one that I think is so beneficial to people that really can do it. See, remember, you got to believe this stuff yourself in order for it to be a defense mechanism. They compartmentalize. So they were given, let's say, a bad diagnosis, and it's on the back burner. And they go about their life, playing golf, doing whatever it is. And they weekly go for radiation, chemo, whatever, but it's really on the back burner. They're enjoying life fully because they really can compartmentalize that part of their life. But you really, really got to do it. So if someone says to you, I just put that stuff on the back burner, no, that's not going to work because they know the stuff's there. It's burning on the back burner. In order for true compartmentalization to work, you don't know it's on the back burner. You don't even think about it. You're going about your life, and people even will remark, my goodness. I mean, Doug knows that he's terminal and he's laughing and going out to dinner with everybody. And God bless him. And what a guy, you know, because he can compartmentalize. Where I used to live in New York, there was a guy that was given a very bad diagnosis, and he really has lived many, many years. And he was just the most amazing at it. Grief, too bad grief, we can compartmentalize. I don't know anybody who was ever able to do that. It colors our lives. And again, someone said, I don't know how much time we're going to have next week. And again, you didn't sign up for a psych class, so I please tell me, you know, you let me know by email no, I want to know more about propaganda. Boy, by the way, propaganda, um, we are living it. I mean, it's just turn on Fox or turn on CNN. That's propaganda. Ukraine, the awful tragedy of Ukraine, the propaganda that exists in Russia and it's believed is incredible. So yeah, the public relations specialists, AKA the propagandists, are hard at work doing a very, very good job. Let's see if I want to tell you about anything else that's interesting about defense mechanisms before we open it up to questions or concerns that you might have, or maybe you'd like to share. I know it's a huge class, but maybe you'd like to share an experience that you've had with somebody or yourself. I'm just looking now to see if there's anything else that I left out. By the way, theories of defense mechanisms are, they've come to us via Freud, but they really still exist. I love these terms. Karen Horney, she called them protective strategies. Leon Festinger developed the well-known concept of cognitive dissonance, when the belief and the action really don't seem to go together. George Valiant, a very influential psychiatrist, called it, he kind of organized it on a scale from immature to mature. And he defined them, just love these words, unconscious homeostatic mechanisms that reduce the disorganizing effects of sudden stress. Don't you love that? And that's what we've been talking about today. Unconscious, very important. Homeostatic, I just want that balance. I want to get back to me. I want to get back to homeostasis. Unconscious homeostatic mechanisms that reduce the disorganizing effects of sudden stress. It sure is disorganizing, sudden stress. We don't like stress. We don't like feeling anxious. And we feel anxious a lot. We feel stressed a lot. Let me just see if there's anything else that I wanted to tell you about. I don't want to forget something, because it is such an interesting topic and we all employ them. But if you know you're employing them, remember, it's not a defense mechanism, but we do employ them and we don't know we are, but we are. That's really basically about it, other than what do we do about it? Well, if what we're doing now is harming us, hopefully we have the resources or we have the bravery to maybe go talk to somebody about our lives. And again, going to a good therapist who knows when to start making some cracks in our defensives so that we aren't on the road that's going to get us in trouble. For example, it just came to mind again, women are always dumped so much. So it's like an example for like the men, but I'm not making a joke of it, because it doesn't matter what your gender is. If you have loved somebody for many years and they leave you, doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, you are so hurt. But we don't want you to do anything that really jeopardizes your life. And I'm not just talking suicide, I'm talking about, we want to get you back to a homeostatic balance. So we don't want you, if your partner of 20 years left you and moved to California, and he's or she is already involved with somebody else. We don't want you to quit your job here in Atlanta to fly to California to look for employment because you know that he's going to return to you. No, we want to stop that. So those are the kinds of things I refer to when I talk about we want to stop something bad happening. You're doing something that really is not in your best interest, and you're doing it because you really, really have not acknowledged the reality. Because again, remember, it distorts reality, but it's got to be unconscious for it to work. So that's been about 45, 50 minutes of my talking to you without YouTube. And I think it's time to open it up for questions, for sharing, for whatever. Can't guarantee I'll have an answer if you have a question, but I'll do my best. And again, if I don't, I'll have the answer for you next week. So if George, you could help me, because I don't see a zillion people and I don't know whose hand. If there's nobody with a question, make one up, because I couldn't handle no questions right now.
Well, let's turn our videos on so Terry can see everyone. And let's use the raise the hand function. We already have Willis up there. Willis, you can unmute.
I just learned last week how deep my sister-in-law's denial is of my wife's death over 2 years ago. I kind of suspected it because she wouldn't return my phone call, but the way it came about, her daughter had asked my sister-in-law for a recipe, and she said, "Oh, I don't have that. That's Paige's. You'll have to ask her." And then Friday, my niece showed her mother a picture of me and Paige from about 6 years ago. And she said, my sister-in-law said, "Oh, that is so sweet. Show that to Paige." And I'm wondering, is there anything I can do about her denial, or just let it go?
Well, a defense mechanism that is very often employed, because there's a zillion of them out there, really, is avoidance. And sometimes people don't want to be connected with what they can't handle. So if someone has been connected to her sister's death, a relative or a good friend, or maybe a location, they're not going to go there, and they're not going to return phone calls because they can't handle talking to you right now, because you are going to remind them of what they don't want to think about. But the last part was a little concerning. So she said at the end, like, "Oh, show that picture to my sister because she's not dead." I'm assuming Paige was the one that passed.
Yes, that's correct.
So she
And that just
actually,
happened 3 days ago.
oh, so she just died 3 days ago.
No, my wife died 2.5 years ago.
Oh, 2.5 years ago. But and is the sister elderly?
Yes, she's about 75.
I personally don't think that's that elderly, but okay. Does she give any other indication that she may not be, that her thinking is confused?
Only that she's just pretty much in denial about how bad her diabetes is. Other than that, she functions very well with the family and her personal finances and all that.
So did you think that it was just a second, like she thought Paige was alive, oh, show it to Paige, and then she realized, oh my God, Paige is deceased? And I'm very, by the way, Willis, sorry for your loss. I know what you go through because my husband died about a year ago. So it's a loss of a partner or spouse. Let me just interject a point and I'll get back to Willis's specific story. is unlike any other loss. And people who have not suffered it don't know. It's gut-wrenching. It changes every aspect of your life. Self-esteem, the way you think, the way you eat, the way you watch television. It absolutely affects your core. So to compare it to the loss of a child or the loss of a sibling or parent, no, it's apples and pears. But back to Willis. So it was just a momentary lapse, like, oh my God, I said, show it to Paige, but I know Paige is gone. So she knows that she's gone.
Well, she has been informed, but she has this ongoing denial of she doesn't think she's alive. Doesn't think she's dead.
All right, that's kind of going beyond denial. So hopefully they're assisting her, or that's problematic. But yes, there are some people that will, yeah, I mean, there are some people, like if you told me, she was much younger or whatever, then I would think, yeah, some people really don't believe it happened, period. They can't handle it, and they go on for, no, my sister's not dead. And they're not, and it's just that sort of, for want of a better term, compartmentalized, not in terms of defense mechanism, but compartmentalized delusion. Because
Yes.
unfortunately, Paige has passed. So it's, yes, you're absolutely seeing denial at its most effective, and maybe not that destructive, actually, because
Okay.
if she needs to believe that, she's not returning your phone calls, because
No.
the ego has blocked your number.
Right.
Remember, there's the ego. The ego has blocked your number. No, she's not going to talk to you. No. Yeah. And I guess hopefully, if it's not, God forbid, the beginning stages of some form of dementia, she will, well, it's been 2.5 years, she will maybe someday be able to recognize that her sister is no longer there. It's heartbreaking. My twin sister died suddenly about 5 years ago. Denial might not have been a bad thing for me to employ, but that's a long story. But I hope that answered your question, Willis.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much. I just won't try to push her because she's got where she's comfortable.
No, don't push her. Absolutely don't push her. Don't push her. She's not ready to be pushed. She's an immovable object. She's not ready to be pushed. And as long as she's functioning in all other areas of her life, hey, whatever gets you through the night.
Yeah. It was devastating to me too, because we'd been married over 55 years. But anyway, it's
So sorry.
I'm handling it.
I know I wish it on nobody. I wish it on nobody. We were together 39 years. He was everything, and he was the finest, kindest man. I only wish that I was being using hyperbole and idealizing the dead. No, it was true. So it makes the loss so profound. And again,
Yes.
I am so sorry for your loss. And
Thank you.
anybody else out there, I am so sorry for any loss that anyone out there now is bearing.
Okay.
Okay.
Carrie, it's Kay. We're excited for your book. I think a lot of us. So when you talk about book being about people that are,
I'm sorry. What could you say that again, Kay? I don't think I
but
heard.
I'm sure we're all excited for your book, and it's about being neurotic. Everybody is neurotic, right? Is it a spectrum or?
Life is a spectrum. It absolutely is. Sure. Yeah. We don't use neurotic anymore. It used to be like, oh, he's so neurotic. Now we have uglier words to describe people that are just being garden variety neurotics. I mean, we all are. Again, it's a spectrum. OCD is a spectrum, obsessive compulsive disorder. How many of you kind of see something tilted, and you kind of want to untilt the pen, or you're sitting on a couch and you see something on the carpet and you're compelled to get up and, so we all have a little bit of that in us. So it's absolutely a spectrum. And personality disorder, somebody also said they want to hear about personality disorders next week. Spectrum, everybody is a little, to use the scary word to a therapist, borderline. Okay. But we'll talk more about that next week if you guys want.
Dave?
Yeah, can you give us examples in politics of denial?
Dare I go there, but I will. I'm going to go there. Don't hate the messenger. He asked a question. Dave asked a question. I'm just answering the question. Donald Trump does believe he won the election because he's not. Again, I'm quoting mental professionals who are apolitical and who don't have a dog in the fight, but just want to get out the truth or their truth. Yeah, he believes he won the election. And he's got a lot of sycophants and disciples who believe he won the election too. He didn't. There are people who believe O.J. Simpson didn't kill his wife. That's not politics, but it just shows you that, and remember, the propagandists say it often enough, it becomes the truth. And they even have strange things that they've said, like, don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe what you see. Like, or, well, there's, that's a fact, but there's a contrary fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, so politics, it's all over politics. But again, isn't it interesting how the public relations people, look at those terms that the other people used for defense mechanisms, the politicians, we see dirty campaigns because they know that a dirty ad, attack your opponent ad, gets you 10 times the votes that your ad that would be listing your accomplishments and what you want to do. So we got the dirty ad. Yeah. So politics, good Lord, it's all over politics. How many of you have friends? And the sad thing is, I live in the mountains of Colorado, which is not that easy for someone from New York. I had lived in Atlanta for just a few years, and when my husband passed, I'm in Colorado now. And I live among people whose political views are the opposite of mine. And I have only one friend or so-called friend here, and she's only here for like the summer. So she's not around. She believes a lot of the stuff that people have gone on television and disproved. In a way that left no doubt that what they had just said was the truth. So we've got a nation that's an example of just what you asked in your question.
Does Donald Trump really believe he won, or is he just saying that to everybody? Is he no deep somewhere?
The last class that I taught, and I happened to teach it with Sal, we wanted to call it, is Trump a sociopath? But we weren't allowed to call it that. But basically that was the class. Is Trump a sociopath? And I talked about borderline personality disorder. I talked about narcissistic personality disorder. I talked about antisocial personality disorder, or whatever you want to label these things. Because, and again, it's not politics. I'm just kind of telling you the truth, or at least what I consider the truth, and other mental health professionals whom I admire greatly and respect, because who cares what I think, but they're biggies. he is a sociopath. He is mentally unbalanced. And for those of you out there, I just wish for the Republican Party to nominate someone whose policies are in accord with the policies that many of you like, but who is not mentally unbalanced. Yes, he's mentally unbalanced enough to believe it. And it all stems, well, it's biology too, but it stems his father. As a New Yorker, I've known about Trump for many years. Trump, I kind of think to he's a right to lifer. And I think to myself, how many women had an abortion because they were involved with Trump when he was a bachelor. Extremely liberal, extremely everything that he now is not. His father also was a sociopath, a racist, not a nice guy. And what he taught Trump, who was the chosen child, his older brother was an alcoholic and had some other things that disqualified him from being the heir apparent. But Trump was the heir apparent, and the father's main theme was, don't be a loser. Everyone hates a loser, disrespects a loser. And furthermore, if you're a loser, I am going to practically disown you because I don't associate with losers, even if they're my son. So yeah, Trump, he's got to believe it. He can't believe he's a loser. He can't believe it. He cannot believe it, Does he know that he's responsible for the January 6th? Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah.
Margita?
Let's see. Yes. So I want to verify, I understand from what I think I heard is that defense mechanisms are not mental disorders.
That's correct.
And so, but I also heard that at one point a therapist will start to crack it. So why?
Because it may be a symptom of, disorder is like a pejorative term, a mental disorder. They will crack it because it is no longer helping you to function, but it is helping you to make bad decisions.
Oh, okay.
And getting yourself into a little bit of trouble because you believe this untruth. But they won't start cracking it until you're strong enough. So the good news is you're strong enough for the therapist to start to crack the
right. So actually, it seems to me that is really a wonderful thing for the brain to have come to, because when you look at it, human existence is wrought with dangers, and there's always only one end. And or like people who live over a fault where the next big earthquake is coming. So I think human existence is like living over a fault anyway, with different aspects. And for you as a very young person to know that must be very frightening. And I think that, well, this is just my idea of, so many high school students and teenagers developing mental problems right now is, if you have brought up in a, like in a religion that tells you God is all good, all knowing, all powerful, and then suddenly we were in the pandemic that, was a horrible thing. We didn't have vaccines. That was probably a very despairing moment for people who come from that way of looking at the world and life.
Yeah.
So having that defense mechanism, I think, helped us to continue and not all jump over the cliff.
You said it far better than I. You got it. You got it. Yeah. Thank God for defense mechanisms.
Yes, I was going to say that too.
Yeah. Get you through the night, Yeah.
I've asked everyone to unmute, and again, I apologize for the video problem, but I had watched most of it, and I think it was better that we got to listen to Terry and to have time for the questions too. So
Thank
I'll try to send those videos out to everyone if you're interested in seeing them. But again, Terry, we appreciate the nice comments about Sal, and we'll be in touch with him and hope everything is going well with the surgery. And we appreciate you getting up at 5 a.m.
No, I got
Hawaii
up at
time.
4. I got up at 4.
Oh, 4. Oh, my.
Well,
Wow.
I had to have some, some sense, although I never have any sense no matter what
You
time.
could
of
take a
day.
nap on the beach, maybe. Well,
Yeah.
let's give Terry a good round of applause, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Very, very
Terry.
good.
Thank you,
Good
guys.
job, Terry.
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much.
As that newscaster said, I love when he says it. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Bye.